Hello, I'm CWO4 Victor Pinion, U.S. Navy retired, telling some stories of my naval career. I've told about up to the point of completing my tour of duty on the Comfair Westpac staff and getting orders to the John F. Kennedy, USS John F. Kennedy, CV67 as the Catapult and Rescue Maintenance Officer. I had especially sought out that specific job on an East Coast ship because all of my sea duty to this point had been on West Coast ships. And people on the West Coast simply badmouth people on the East Coast, and the East Coast badmouth the West Coasters. Well, I wanted to round out my naval career, my 30-year naval career, with tours of sea duty on both coasts and in the same job. So I requested about 2.5 years in advance of transferring to be the Catapult and Rescue Maintenance Officer aboard the John F. Kennedy. The detailer wrote me in for that position and wrote my orders. It was a good thing I did, because other people might have gotten that job instead of me, because I'd already held it on one ship. And it's a tough job, but I just knew that I could do that job extremely well anywhere. So I wanted that East Coast tour of sea duty as a Catapult Rescue Maintenance Officer, and I got it. And I transferred from Comfair Westpac. I left a good turnover file, and my relief was not going to get there for 2 months. The job was going well. We had, I believe, supported the fleet in the Western Pacific Indian Ocean better maybe than ever before from Subic Bay in the Philippines, the deploying ships from the States. I told a little bit about that during my Comfair Westpac Det QB Ship Installation Officer tour. We did a lot of good things there. I'm very proud of them. And those Capsule Rips, superstar performers. Sat Stafford, Don Cooper, Tom Hennon, wonderful men. And then up in Yokosuka, Dick Schumann, Ernie Jones, their reliefs. Fine men. But we did some wonderful things. Anyway, I checked out, I transferred, and my family and I flew back to the States, and we visited family in Illinois and in Tennessee, and then we flew on out because we'd sold our vehicles in the Philippines before we transferred. Flew on out to Norfolk, Virginia, where my old friend Big Joe Dawson and his wife Faye met us at the airport. Took us home with them. Me and Big Joe enjoyed a beer together and reminisced a little bit, and then they took us to the Navy Lodge where we had reservations to wait, because I still had a month's leave on the books that I had to use up. So, but I wanted to get out to Norfolk because we needed to do several things. One was buy a car, and another was to find a house to rent or lease. And while we were passing through Tennessee, we purchased a 42-acre patch of woods on a mountaintop, which was a beautiful place for our future retirement, which we would go there and live the good country life and do hobby farming, which we did. I'll tell about that later. But we bought that property, and then we moved on out to Norfolk. Big Joe and Faye Dawson's met us at the airport, took us home with them, and they chauffeured us around until we finally bought a car. And then we rented a house. Actually, we leased it in Norfolk, about 5 miles from Big Joe and Faye. And but our household goods hadn't arrived yet. So I had made a general power of attorney out for my wife, Lynette, in my absence. So she could serve in anything that I could do, she had the authority to do. Well, Big Joe and Faye loaned us a card table, a couple of chairs, and a TV, and the house had a microwave oven and refrigerator and a stove, and that's about it. We slept on sleeping bags on the floor. I deployed Kennedy was at sea during this time. I went over to all of the shore-based activities that did work with the Kennedy. I went to the Commandant Lynette and talked with the ship installations officer people there. And they had the typical East Coast, West Coast attitude of bad mouthing the other. They didn't have much good to say about the West Coast because they were East Coasters. Anyway, so I said, well, I'm here to serve an East Coast tour's sea duty to see how East Coast does business. Okay, so they gave me a pretty good rundown on the ship, and they said they liked all the people on board the ship, a bunch of good people. And I went over to each of the capsule offices, and I talked with them. The shipyard, Norfolk Naval Shipyard, which the ship was scheduled to go into for a year-long overhaul. In a little over a year, about a year and a half from now, it's going to go in there for a year-long comprehensive overhaul. I reviewed the planning effort for that overhaul that had been done so far, and I approved of what they had done there. I mean, they seemed to be very professional people and planning well for that overhaul. The ship pulled into port, and I reported aboard. Everybody's leaving the ship as I'm going aboard. I met the man I'd be relieving, which was an LDO lieutenant, good man, and the maintenance chief and the catapult chiefs. As they're coming through the crowd, I already pretty well knew them, but some of them I had not really met before, but they were generally together in a group. So, well, we'll see you when you get back to the ship after you have a long weekend or get back from leave and whatnot. Well, I went on aboard and checked aboard. This was on a Friday, and they gave me a check-in sheet, come back, check in on Monday. So I went home and actually back to the house we had rented. We didn't have any household goods yet. You know, TV, card table, a couple of chairs. On Monday morning, I come back, I started checking in for duty. And as I checked in through various, Lieutenant Jim Neary, the man I was relieving as the maintenance officer, was there, and he introduced me to quite a few of the people I'd be doing business with. A professional man. And he also told me that during his first year or so aboard, he really had to struggle with it. And I had already been told by one of the former Commodore Land ship installation officers that he had recommended that Ensign Neary be fired for incompetence. Well, of course that embarrassed Ensign Neary, but he had a good maintenance chief, a really good one, a senior chief, named Jim Mitchell, who helped train him as a maintenance officer. I inspected the machinery, and I was impressed with it, even though I found, I think it was 23 or 24 notebook pages, like 8 by 10, the little wire thing at the top. 23, 24 pages of discrepancies with the machinery, but that wasn't unusual. I mean, but I found generally that the attitude of the crew and the condition of the machinery was better than average. As I was checking in to each of the departments, I was particularly interested in meeting people of the supply department, engineering department, and such, people that I would be doing business with as a maintenance officer. I discovered, to no surprise, that the rapport with the engineering department was poor, really bad. Apparently the air boss and the chief engineer didn't like each other, and that rolled downhill throughout their departments. And so the support that Catapult Rescue Maintenance got from the engineering department was I would say, use the term forcing thing, where you had to have their help. You would have to force them to help you. Now this is going to be a two-part story, so I'm ending part one here. Y'all carry on.